Yes.
Testing again. Sorry.
All right, over and you gotta play that riff before we actually.
Okay, yeah. Okay, here.
Change the sound.
Okay, ready?
Yeah. Woo. All right, welcome to IoT Coffee Talk. If you're not following us already, you should be, iotcoffeetalk.com. Today, I think we've kind of come to the conclusion that we're going to talk about a few topics, maybe a little bit of COVID-19, the surge that we're seeing, especially in Texas, over 1 million cases. Maybe we'll talk about ways we can maybe figure out how to leverage and use IoT to make a difference. Some other topics, maybe we'll have some time to talk about some sustainable development goals. That's one of the continued areas of focus for our IoT Coffee Talk. So who wants to kick it off and maybe talk about what's happening in your own state? We already talked about Texas. It's being that 1 million cases now, and they said Florida's on its way. So what's happening in Spain, Mark? Are you guys still in lockdown?
Yeah, no. Well, in Spain it's pretty bad, actually. Yeah. So there is like they decided to don't make a lockdown, a proper lockdown, but you have to be at home at 10 p.m. And in Catalonia, in the state where I live, all the restaurants, bars, hairdressers, and so on are closed. So it's only accepted to do delivery on them. But there are other states where, you can arrive at home at 12 a.m., for example, at night. So it's not that strict, or the restaurants are open. So it depends on every state. On the other hand, what I was listening today on the radio on my morning was that some of these states are cheating on data. So they have to give like the last 24 hours information about detections, but as well last 14 days and last 30 days. So some states are cheating, and then after 30 days they say, by the way, last 30 days, so 30 days ago I was wrong, so there are like 1,000 more dead people than I told you.
That's horrible.
It's that's tricky. The trick that some are using.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the biggest enemies, along with the COVID virus, is some of us who are just either not taking the virus seriously. And I think some of the laughable things that I've seen, and you see this across the world actually, is this policy of instituting curfews. It's like, well, the virus doesn't operate based on a curfew. It doesn't have like operating hours. And I think, Rob, you and I, way back when this thing started, we had thrown around a bunch of ideas. We've been on several podcasts and panels on the topic of COVID and how we can innovate, leveraging some of the wonderful technologies that are available to us, or even are waiting on the wings, like 5G, right?
Yeah.
Recently I've been posting, it's like, what the hell have we been doing with all this time? We've spent, just in the United States, we've spent trillions of dollars, and we took a massive multi-trillion dollar hit to our economy during the second quarter or third quarter. Well, what do we do with that time? And so I think, we really need to ask ourselves, have we innovated? Have we really used that time, that all that fiscal funding, and it's basically a disaster relief. It's not a stimulus program. It's a disaster relief program, right? You're not going to get that money back. I mean, U.S. economy got hit, 32% in Q2. I think it was Q2. We're not getting that back, but we have 2.5 or $3 trillion on a credit card, which is our national debt. And so what did we do during that time, other than, some of this, warp speed thing, which only, what was that? You're basically buying a ton of drugs that are vaccine candidate drugs that you don't know whether or not they're going to work. and you're just teeing that up in the supply chain. Okay, that's great, but
Actually, a good thing.
what? Yeah, it is a great thing.
I would argue that, I mean, there's a lot of really great scientists and doctors that are working on vaccines and other medications to help. I mean, the big goal is, number one, we don't want people to be in the hospital. We don't want them to die. That's what we need to focus on stopping first. Yeah. And then third, we need to vaccinate. But the crazy thing is that number on that election, $4 billion spent on that election, and a good on that U.S. election, and a good portion of that was individual donations. So hogwash, we're in a recession. Hogwash, the money, amount of money that's coming in from individual donors. Maybe it's the wealthy, maybe it's middle income people. I don't know, but I'm just like, wow, do we really need another stimulus package that just goes to everyone, or does it need to be targeted to real programs, real industries that are falling apart, small businesses that are struggling? Or do we just want to batch it out to everyone and cast that net and see what happens? I don't know. That to me seems way more alarming for our country in terms of our progress, and we're just not making. These numbers are scary. This surge is very.
But it boils down to what we always say in IoT is you need to have visibility to stuff before you can institute any of those fine-grained policies and measures. You need to be able to see this thing, right? And so,
why do you think that we started with this blanket federal mandate across the board, and then the state started doing some things, and then the local community started doing things? Because like, if we really got a handle on where the cases are by county, like Texas is like it's bigger than many countries, right? If you looked at county by county, there are some counties that just they don't have the cases. So they should not have these as strict of requirements. But in some of the more populated areas where it's insane, I feel like I wish from the beginning we would have started looking at concentrated maps in the hot spots, in watching this in real time and making real-time decisions around that. But instead, we started at this federal level that said, hey, all of you are locked down. It's like, where's the balance in losing economy, losing businesses versus death loss, right? We don't want death, but where is this?
Well, you know, what's pretty obvious is that we didn't do it right. Europe didn't do it right. I mean, the report card is out. You look at Taiwan, you look at even like Thailand, Vietnam, South Korea, China, okay? The one country with the population density that should have, fueled that epidemic that started in Wuhan. These guys have it under control. And even though there's a lot of folks sitting there saying, oh, you know, China, their numbers aren't real. I mean, we can question our own numbers. Let's be truthful.
You can question all the numbers, right?
Yeah. But the fact of the matter is the kids in China are going to school. You don't see mass spread of the virus. And, you know, the thing is that you can't hide from this thing, you know? I mean, in New York, I think people forget that we were burying people in massive ditches, you know, mass graves in the United States. I mean, this is like stuff you see in like the third world happening in New York. And the thing is all this virus needs to do is get past the healthcare capacity of a region in order for it to go ballistic. And then we saw in Spain, we saw in Italy, this thing kill at a case fatality rate around 10 to 15%. So without the healthcare, this thing is deadly, you know? And so we've benefited from having this massive capacity in the United States. And the question is going to be, how quickly can we get resources to where they need to be in a dynamic fashion? But you can only do that in an effective fashion. You can only do that if you can see the thing. And that's why, like in Asia, you have so many countries that are now able to just do blanket testing of a whole city in like a couple of days. Can we do that? No. Can they do that in Europe? No. They're not even isolating. They tell you to go home and infect your family.
The question is why not? Why not? Why is that not possible? So, for example, Slovakia, that it's a country in Europe, they test 5 million people. The army tests 5 million people in 2 days in a weekend. why that's not possible.
It is possible. It just takes willpower, political will, mobilizing. Back to Stephanie's point, where do you want to send your money? If you got money and people and resources, are you just going to send everybody a check, which you can? Or are you going to get the Army or the National Guard to go out there and start administering tests? Bringing it back to IoT and things like that. When this thing started, I remember we did some sessions, I think for the IoT Day Slam or whatever, we talked about, in the end, data was our best ally, right? And that's what IoT is all about. It's a data source. And we talked about getting data. We talked about digital twins, identifying safe zones and hotspots.
Yep.
And where people could maybe go to work and where it was not safe. But, all this, I'm sure you're right. We never imagined we would still be in this boat this far down the road, because I know all we talked about back in, February and January, February, March was testing. That's all we talked about was, and we assumed that there would be this massive ramping up in testing and that we would be testing everybody all the time. I know we were proposing crazy stuff I thought, certainly if we can go to the moon, we can figure out a way to test everybody a lot. Yeah. And we would be able to use data, and we would know where people are, and we'd know who to isolate and who can go to work and all that stuff. Yeah. And it just didn't happen.
And you know what's weird? If you think about it, I don't know, y'all tell me in your regions or your communities, it was not but 45, 60 days ago where you could drive through any community, you could see drive-through testing, you could see testing everywhere, free. Yeah. Now I don't see any of those anywhere. It's all happening within the medical. So it's like, what happened to those? The numbers haven't gone down. Why did all those free, easy, quick drive-through testing areas located, especially in the cities? They had them everywhere, and in Reunion Arena and Dallas, downtown Dallas, they had them everywhere, but those are all gone.
Yeah. But I remember the whole deal. Remember the deal was going to be in every Walmart parking lot and Walgreens. Yeah. I don't see it anywhere.
Yeah. No, and I'm hearing some folks are waiting a week to 2 weeks to get tested, or to get an appointment to get tested. Well, by then the information is, we all know, if you feel like you're sick or you may have it, or you really want to go get checked because you've been exposed, 2 weeks is too late. So I think that's the problem that we're facing right now. And we have testing issues, and we've closed down all of those mass testing sites that were here just a few months ago.
Probably this is because of the lab's bandwidth, no? The laboratory's bandwidth. It's they got overflow with too many tests. So
they have a company now that developed a home test kit. It uses the PCR method, right? Which is the much more accurate and also proactive test, right? It can detect the virus materials versus looking for the antibody response from your body. And this is probably as close to what we were talking about way back when, where we were suggesting sending home kits and then having special units, then hazmat suits or whatever, picking these things up. I mean, think about it. The virus is like anthrax. It's a hazardous biomaterial. Why would you send it through the mail? But we do these things that are, it just boggles my mind. It's like, okay, we send the stuff through the mail, or we're going and using this drive-through testing facility, where, you can have a lapse in the protocol, where the people who are administering the test could be infecting other people in the line. So, they're getting the test, and so the test comes out negative, but what's happened as that person's gone through their testing, they've acquired the virus. I mean, it's just, it doesn't make sense. I don't know. And the report card is out. And here's the thing that's so frustrating for me. we know this happens. We've seen this in 1918 with the Spanish flu. It's not like we don't know how these pandemics pan out, you know, but the thing that really frustrates me is we've dumped so much money into this thing. We've lost so much money in this. The question I would like to ask you guys is, what have you seen out there that we've done that is an additive capability that we could use now and in the future to defend ourselves and be able to improve our response to this as well as future pandemics?
What did I just walk into?
We're at COVID-19, bro.
I mean, I just came in to wish Rob, the happiest of Veteran Days.
Yeah, happy Veterans Day. Yeah.
And I walked into this.
We were talking about that before we recorded. And we've got to definitely send our props out to all of our all our veterans, everyone who's served. Thank you so much. Thanks,
Rob. Say you're welcome. We need to see you, dude. Say you're welcome. Come on. There you go.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Maybe we need a quick veteran story to spice it up here.
A veteran story. Wow. You know what? You're asking you're asking for a C story, aren't you? Yeah.
Yes, those are the best.
The tales from yeah.
I tell you, I tell a lot of people that my time in the Navy, I certainly, this is obviously unrelated to COVID or anything, but.
Wait a minute. You can tie it back to COVID. Can you imagine being out overseas and COVID breakout?
Oh, it's funny because I stay in touch, with some of my old shipmates from being on submarines. And we did joke, and you probably have heard of this too, because you've certainly seen movies or fiction written about things that seem similar to this. The notion when this thing started, I remember some of my friends saying, gosh, could you imagine there might be people out at sea on a patrol on a submarine submerged and they don't know that this is going on, and maybe they come back months later and it's already over. Obviously that didn't play out that way, but the notion of complete isolation, talk about being put in the NBA bubble. A bunch of folks on a submarine, who were not connected to any of this, and they're just gone. It is pretty interesting, You know what? I always like to say a few positive things about my experience when I was in the military. It's not just about the stuff you think about. Obviously, you're there to defend the country and all that kind of stuff, but there's so many great positive things that happen that I think people don't realize. And so I want to shout out a few of those, especially for any young people who are thinking about stuff like this. I finished my college degree while I was on the submarine. I had about 90 hours going in. I went in right when the Gulf War started. And so there were programs in the Navy all throughout the military where you could go to college. And so when I was at the base, so I was in multiple bases. I've been on 2 different submarines, but on base you could go take classes. Just to show how old everybody is, they had Pioneer laser discs on board the submarine, recorded classes of professors. I don't know if anyone even knows what a Pioneer laser disc is, but it predated a lot of technology, and it was the forerunner of all the digital technology we use today to take classes. And so it was positive for me. I got my college degree while I was on the submarine, which is great. I taught myself how to write code and databases. I bought lots of books. You have time. You're away from the world, the day-to-day world that everyone else is living in, and you've got your job to do. My job is I'm driving the submarine. But when I was off, my time off, I could have played video games or I could have watched movies, but I just started reading books about how to write programming and databases and things like that, which prepared me for when it was time to go to the civilian world to be able to get a job into the career that I'm in, in the technology space. And so I always tell people I owe everything to the Navy. It was like the most positive experience for me. And I'll give you another story of real positivity. When we would sit on watch, So we were on an 18-hour day on submarines instead of 24 hours. So you're on watch, whatever it is you do, you're on for 6 hours. So I'm driving with my watch station in the control room. You know, if you've seen Red October or Crimson Tide or any of those kind of movies, you've seen all these guys crowded around there and doing their thing. And you would have a lot of time to talk to people. You would, in fact, you would know someone's life story by the time you're done with the patrol. You're out there for months, and you know, when you're sitting there just kind of cruising along, 5 knots to nowhere, waiting for the message from the president to launch your birds, you talked about all kinds of things. I met people who were drug lookouts in the projects in different cities whose lives were going nowhere, and they were worried that they'd probably be dead before they made it to age 25. And what I saw, one of the things, I can't speak for other services, but in submarines, there's this notion of being qualified in submarines. And so, you know how a pilot, has their wings on their uniform, and, so we have these things, they're called dolphins, but it's kind of similar to a pilot's wings. And so you have to get qualified in submarines. And so you'll spend your first year on board a submarine, you have to learn every system on the submarine. And so you have this little qualification book. And so even though whatever your job is, you might be a sonarman or a torpedo man or whatever, but you have to learn how to run the nuclear reactor, torpedoes, sonar, like every job. Cross-training, right? Because things can go bad in wartime. All of a sudden your buddy might not be around if something blows up.
Redundancy, right? Redundancy.
Exactly. We have to have redundancy. We have to load balance, right?
Yeah.
And so, same concepts that we use in tech.
Yeah.
So, but they push you through, and in about a year, you're done with this, and you get signed off by different officers, and then you sit at a board for several hours with, it might be the captain or the XO and a bunch of officers, and you get grilled for hours. And then if you get through, you pass, you get qualified in submarines, and you get your dolphins. I watched these young people, these young guys who didn't have a future, potentially, based on what they're telling me. And I watched them go through a funnel and come out the other side. And they learned skills, and they learned confidence, and they learned that they were smart and that they could make a contribution to society. And it was a magical thing. To see that happen. You may be surprised to know this. This seems like outdated. There is still the notion, at least when I was in, where somebody could find themselves in front of a judge for whatever crime potentially, and it's like, are you going to go to jail, or am I going to send you to the military? It's in edge cases, but I've heard about those kind of things. I guess the takeaway is it's what you make of it, and I've seen positive change in people, and I see them coming in the funnel from one side where maybe they don't have much of a future, and I see them come out. I thought getting qualified in submarines was harder than anything I did in college. And people are just pushing you to get through. And so when you come out, you have a new level of confidence. You know that you can learn skills. Also, perspective is the other thing, my big takeaway from my time in the military. And it has to do with your day-to-day life. Crisis like COVID, stress of a job, stress at work. People are stressed out, freaked out. I can't handle what's going on. When you've been out there playing cat and mouse with Soviet Akula submarines, or you've been out there at launch depth practicing, setting condition 1SQ for WSRT for strategic launch, everything else seems like child's play. You're at a different level. You're like, I've been ready to do unimaginable things. And tough stuff. And so it makes everything seem like, it's small shit. It really is. And so it gives you a perspective when other people are falling apart. This is good to have that perspective, that in comparison, this ain't nothing.
Yeah. Hey, we should give him a hand.
Thing that
Let's give Rob a hand.
I mean, I think.
Thanks for your service, man.
Thanks.
I think the most amazing thing is seeing people come in from all walks of life that all have that same opportunity to go in there and take advantage of that, and all of the benefits that come along with that, and having that world perspective in that challenge. I mean, those guys come out of there, guys and girls come out of there like, I mean, they're prepared. Think about that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I have to give big props to. I just found out yesterday that my nephew is joining the Army. He's 18 years old and made the decision, and he hasn't even finished high school. He's a senior, so he'll finish this year, and he's joining the Army. So
wow.
Cool.
Yeah, you just don't realize, like a lot of my family members, my dad, my grandfather, and everything, they were all in the military. But you think about I'm only speaking for the United States, but I think about, talking to my grandfather who was a bomber pilot in World War II. And then you hear about that greatest generation that came back from World War II and they created America, like what we think of it is today. They invented the whole thing. And it's because they came back from living hell. And then they come back here and they're going, you know what? We got this.
Yeah, and then the country supported them. GI Bill.
Yes, absolutely. The GI Bill was huge, absolutely huge. Get people educated. Education is absolutely.
Yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if I saved this episode or I ruined it, but I thought that was such a great story. And all I think about, I mean, I never served. I don't have a military background, but your analogy of the funnel, like people from X walks of life with maybe no opportunities, bad situations being transformed. And again, I can't speak from your perspective, but that just sounds like a system that had that design in mind, right? And it would be great and again, I keep caveating it. It would be great if we had more systems like that can take an individual with a diverse background that maybe it's not an optimal background, whatever that means at that time, and be able to funnel these individuals to success. And anyway, that's where my mind went to. If we had more robust systems.
That's like what we were.
It's
true.
It's like
we were talking about.
This is so we're all talking at the same time. I say that's so true because I see programs. I see, wow, wouldn't it be great if we had schools that transform kids' lives, right? Our educational system. I look at my kids in the school that they go to, and they go from kinder to senior. Those seniors are defending a thesis their senior year, and you talk to them, and those kids are so well prepared for life, for college, for whatever. I'm like, wow, I wish every kid could have that same experience, but they don't. So
cool.
That would be a great program for our education.
Well,
the idea of taking people through a funnel, it's such a good deal. I'm going to say one other thing, and then I'll leave it to you. There was another thing I want to bring up about the military that was different than I see in mass society. We're getting so heavy here. We talk a lot about racial problems in our country, and where we didn't have racial problems? In the military. It didn't exist. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing. They're all brothers and sisters in the military. I'm just giving you my experience and what I saw. It was never an issue, never a thing like you see day to day in the streets of our country. It was totally different. The bond, the things that all these people went together, it created a family, and it was colorblind, and it was magical. And I wish there was a way to take that experience broader level.
Yeah, that's nice.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, the only comment I was going to make is the interesting thing is a lot of the IoT stuff that we're tinkering around with and the concepts, right? I mean, Rob, you and I, we always talk about Greyhound as being sort of this really the ultimate movie to understand the genesis of all this IoT thinking. A lot of things get invented in the military, right? Internet. I mean, that's all military stuff.
Yeah, you're right. You start with DARPA, and out comes something for the military.
Yeah, millimeter wave, microwave, all these RF technologies, it comes from the military. The most advanced stuff, that's where it's developed. And so we've always seen this
cybersecurity.
Right. And so you always see these technologies that originate from military projects and programs that eventually make it into the commercial realm. And we talk a lot about how we really need to leave it to private enterprise to innovate. Actually, the military drives a lot of innovation. But what would be, going back to education, what would be great to see, and this goes back to some of the stuff that we were talking about in the last episode about in IoT and education, is if we took that same kind of discipline that the military uses to train people, and that became like a national sort of strategy to continually modernize our workforce, and put that kind of pressure. And who knows, maybe one of these days, that whole practice, because many of our business practices originate from military practices, right? How we organize this whole top-down
organizational structure.
Structure, supply chain. The whole idea of supply chain is military, right?
Right. Got to keep sending food and ammo to the guys that are 10,000 miles away.
Yeah. Sometimes I think the private sector takes a little too much credit for the stuff that the public sector has created. Especially the military.
It's an interesting thing about education, or how you learn something and how you do things repeatedly. That's different in the military. It's the same in the military, at least my experience on submarines, and it's also the same in the space program with NASA, is this notion, and here's a term we use in programming, it's called a procedure. But everything is a procedure and an evolution. An evolution is a big task that you've got to accomplish that has a number of steps. And one of the things was beaten into our heads was, you learn stuff, you get smart, you memorize things, you go, I got this, I know everything. Well, the way things work in the military and in the space program is we don't ever want to rely on you being a genius and really having this in your head. And so when it's time to go through our procedure to do a drill, let's say a missile drill where we're going to go to launch depth and pretend that we're going to do that thing, we always bring out these big binders and everybody sits there and we go through step 1, step 2. If you watch movies about the military or the space program, you'll see them doing that every time. When they're up there in Apollo 13, they're opening up binders and books and following a procedure. Even if that person's an expert and they've done this their whole life, it doesn't matter. I remember that was pounded into my head. They're like, don't be a hero, use your manual. Because people, it's almost like pair programming or other parts of other eyeballs on things, because they know people screw up. Because they do. You can be an expert, but you'll miss one thing. That's how we have bugs in software. And so the notion of pulling out your manual every time you had to do a serious thing and everyone step by step walking through it to make sure that you get it right. Take a look at the next time you watch a movie about something that happened with NASA. You'll see them do the exact same thing. And it works.
Analog revolution.
Yeah, on the planes they also have manuals in the planes. No.
Yes, they do.
They've been getting rid of those for some time now, Mark. But you're right. They would travel with this briefcase of tons of paper, but a lot of them have replaced them with iPads. I don't know which makes sense. There's more connectivity in a plane. Well, actually, I think there's more connectivity to the ground in a modern plane than there might be, in a submarine somewhere. Again, I don't know. I'm just guessing.
But the iPad is doing the same thing.
Okay, well, I do like, Rob, that on one of these, there's no hacking it. So when we're opening that binder, it is good information. As from what we can tell, there's no bad actors on a piece of paper.
No, but you can spill coffee on it. Come on. Yeah. You can spill a glass of wine while you're driving the submarine.
I'm right there with you, David.
All right.
Right there with you. Write it down.
Yeah.
Also, people have a better connection with their brain and memory when they write down notes versus typing it in a computer.
That I think that has been scientifically proven. And Rob, when you were sharing that operationally in a submarine, whether you have job X, you have to learn like all these other jobs. That is foundational for critical thinking in the event of a real emergency. Where I'm not going to use military analogies, but if I am in a project, a technology project, and my mate is not available, right? I will be able to do this person's job because we all know everything about the project, whether it's a ship or, we're shipping IoT kits somewhere. And I know we talked about this in the context of education, but is that critical thinking, so that when kids are doing their thesis on their senior year, that we can defend it and is evidence and fact based. And when we find facts that might be polar opposites, that we can still have discourse and come to an agreement as to, hey, we really disagree on this point. How do we stay together to find, to articulate the truth out of the fact? There couldn't be two truths about things, but let's do it. Let's do it together because our opinions are way, way different. Mm-hmm. And with a critical thinking foundation, then that becomes logical. It's like, you know what? You're right. We don't agree. Mm-hmm. Let's research the data and let's get through this together. And now in a submarine, I imagine you're forced to be together. There's no storming out of the room and unfriending on Facebook. Out of here.
Right? They do have the torpedo tubes. So
I guess. So anyway, but I read again. That's how I'm internalizing your great anecdotes here, Rob. I think they could be used outside of the submarine.
That was super deep, man.
It's a heavy
Think about the level of training. The level of training too. Like, let's take this to normal corporations. And so we're gleaning some insights here. What's another thing that we always did in the military? We didn't train and learn something all up front and then never did it again. And then we go like, we got this, or maybe we have manuals. We were doing drills every day for the most important things. And we were training and exercising and doing drills to perfect our craft daily. There's something to be taken away from that as well. Should corporations, should organizations, how much time should they be spending? What percentage of an employee's day or year should they be doing training? And maybe it's even repetitive training on their skill. I don't know. It's something to think about. A lot of people that go to college and they say, I know this, and then they're good. But
isn't that part of the premise behind, and take it even further, the digital twin? We're creating real world simulation in the military. Situational awareness is huge for training. So all of those things and creating those real live environments so we can really test out our IoT technology, our solutions, it just takes it to that next level. And if we're not sitting here practicing, experiencing it real time and really beating up the process to perfect it, that's the whole premise behind the digital twin technology, is to be able to create that experience real time and live environment.
She just dropped the Buddha bomb, dude.
She did. She brought it home, and she brought it home.
Situational awareness.
IoT is situational awareness at its heart. That's what it is.
Buddha bomb, right there.
Boom. You know what's crazy? It's I used to do a ton of research in the government sector, and 10 years ago we were researching and talking about this term with a DoD project I was working on. So it's like bringing it back to the military. They were doing these things before the commercial market even thought about it. This is part of their day-to-day. This is part of their training. So we can make it go full circle from IoT back to the military, back to our Veterans Day.
Yeah. So let's appreciate the military.
But the ROI is different, Stephanie, because on one, I've got, like if I don't get this thing done, like the bad things that could happen are exponential in the military in context to a more mundane civilian use case.
That's so true.
So that's one. And then it's like, I haven't done a lot of work in the public sector, but from the from some that I do remember, it was, get me something that gets the job done. We were not looking at, it has to be tiny and aesthetically pleasing. It's like, no, doesn't do this. And I need it now. You deliver it and maintain it. Yes. And it was like, isn't this the joke with the black box? Isn't that, everything that's ugly, here, it's a black box, but it'll do that thing. We do a lot of black boxes because
make it work first and you can pretty it up later.
Yes, you can paint the black box in any color you want after the fact.
So I want to ask our only European representative here. What do you think about this? I mean, we're all Americans, so we have this particular affinity to the military and appreciation for the military, maybe even military centricity. What do you think? What's your reaction?
Stop recording right now.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't want to explain my pathetic story with the Spanish army because maybe after the great story told by Rob, I don't know if it's the place. But actually, to explain to tell it short, so I'm the Spanish army says that I'm not normal, so I'm not allowed to go to the army.
You mean you're like too huge?
Something, I will stay in the civilization.
They don't make boots big enough for you.
Exactly. Probably that's the situation. So that's how a Spanish army has these one size fits all. That it's in all the markets, and all the societies as well. But on the other hand, I would love to live in a world where there are no armies. So that would be amazing as well.
Oh, yeah. That was deep.
I'm surprised they didn't say you're the ideal super soldier for España.
Yeah, no kidding.
I figured you would be on posters on every street corner.
Yeah, you would think they'd be genetically engineering guys like you. You don't even need guns. You can just run around and crush people's heads.
Exactly.
People don't realize how big this guy is.
I had to
actually
meet
him.
And the doctor made a paper, like an official paper. I don't know if my parents still have it, but it says that I'm not. Like, I have a normality, so I cannot serve the country.
Are you sure it doesn't just say, like, a big stamp that says Más Gigante?
IoT Giant.
I think if we replicated Marc and he probably has, a gigantic wingspan. Yeah. And it's so tall that we can make human COVID barriers. And then, that way, and then they're just holding hands, there's no SWAT gear, there's no tear gas, just a bunch of marks holding people, keeping people safe.
Well, we're going to wrap it up. So today, we learned a lot. What did we learn?
That was great.
We had some really good stories.
Actually, can I
Marc, go ahead.
Something before because my IoT mind was boiling this week because I heard this new about Pfizer company who has a vaccine that it's very promising. But they were explaining the situation that the vaccine needs to stay at minus 70 degrees Celsius. I don't know what Fahrenheit is that. And my IoT mind, this supply chain and cold chain and so on was started to boil like, oh my God, so we will need a lot of cold chain IoT sensors to check that. So I just wanted to mention that.
Awesome.
Well, okay, so then let's take another couple of seconds because then here's the thing. So most of vaccines are heavily regulated, and there are special containers that are made to transport the vaccines and keep it at the right temperature. So before someone drops into the notes that they've solved this, right? Yeah. It needs to think of how do we keep a correct temperature reading inside of that vessel that may also include some sort of liquid, maybe corrosive to chipset, to comms board chemical in there. It has to be inside. We don't care about the external temperature. I can tell you
that we want to track it too.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point. I want to drop the IoT sensor. I want what do we want? So we want to know where it is. We want to know the temperature, and then depending on the composition of the vaccine, tilt might also be important. Some vaccines necessitate to be standing still in an upright position 100% of the time. $1 billion idea brought to you by the IoT Coffee Talk crew for free.
But that's already solved, David. I'm sorry, but I can tell you a couple of companies that have been doing this for a long time. Actually, it's funny because actually the pet or the animals vaccines business, it's all, I don't know, probably it's bigger than the humans vaccines business. So we used to have a customer at the Things.io who used to track the cold chain of these animal vaccines traveling from Europe to Asia. It was fun to see how they were in the middle of the Dubai or Middle East airports, like for 8 hours outside, like 60 degrees Celsius, but inside with dry ice at minus 200 degrees or something like that, the proof was saying, but staying there 60 degrees Celsius for 8 hours, so unattended. So I have a lot of stories about that. But this is already.
You know how much 60 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit is? It's hot as hell, Mark.
That's
That's how hot it is.
But yeah, if you are in the desert in Middle East, it's very hot during the day.
Well, yeah. So we're gonna wrap it up. So IoTCoffeeTalk.com if you're not following us. Also follow us on Twitter at IoT Coffee Talk. And you know what? We have a LinkedIn group too. We're posting things there. So follow us there. Any final words or final tips? And thank you all veterans. Anyone want to have a final word before we sign off?
To all our veterans, we salute you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I love your guitar, Leonard.
Yeah, we need to wrap it up with a nice guitar.
Show your guitar. Maybe explain how it works. If it's IoT connected or not.
Let me see if I can do something.
Take us out with eruption.
Something that has to do with, America patriotic.
Okay, hold on. No.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
No, I can't do that. Oh my God, I massacred.
Your citizenship is about to be
revoked. All here.
Oh no. Yeah.
You have to play the Titanic song.
I'm not Jimi Hendrix.
He took us back to Woodstock there. Good Hendrix.
Oh my God. Oh, please. Lord, forgive me. Oh, geez.
Good stuff.
Bye. Bye, guys. Cheers.
Bye. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good week.